Okay, the lesson for today is about sequencing. And this activity is geared toward children about 7 to 10 years old. Obviously, it can be adjusted if the children are older or younger, or if you have a combination of different age groups. I think it's important to set out from the beginning by saying we are talking about sequencing today. And I would keep repeating that term and keep redefining sequencing throughout the lesson. Sequencing obviously means that things happen in order. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And understanding and knowing how to put things in the correct order is going to be very helpful toward understanding and comprehending what is going on. For example, when your teacher gives you directions, if the teacher says, sit down, take out your math book, and turn to page 33, it's very important to know what order to do those things in. Also, it's important for knowing what to do next. If you have a list of things to do, and you've gotten down to number 3, you need to know that next you're going to do number 4. Listening to stories and understanding them is another place where you use sequencing. If the events in the story happen in a different order, you might end up with a completely different story. So knowing the right order for the events is important. For example, if your teacher reads you a story about a man who came home from work, sat down and had his dinner, and then went upstairs to go to sleep, and then he died, that's a sad story. On the other hand, if the teacher tells you a story about a man who comes home from work, goes up to his bedroom, goes to sleep, and dies, and then gets up and has dinner, well then that's a completely different story. That's now a ghost story. Another way that we use sequencing is by telling others about what has happened to you. If you come home from school and your mom wants to know what happened to you during the day, it's important to be able to tell everything in order, or remembering the sequence, not just the last thing that happened to you. I would reiterate again that we're talking about the idea that things happen in order. And one way that I like to visualize this is having a picture of a train. And I would say that the train has an engine, which is the first thing that happens, or the first thing that comes at you as the train is going by. And then each of the cars down the line to the end, the caboose, which is the last thing that you see. Now, I would use this visual aid by having the kids, first of all, count the cars, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. Then I would have them name the position of the cars, first, second, third, fourth. And I might ask each of the kids in turn a simple question. For example, what color is the third car? And they would have to figure out which is the third in the sequence. And I like this visual aid because it helps to explain not only that things happen in a certain order, but also that you can't really rearrange the cars. They're on the track and they're happening in a linear way. Now, in order to help the kids really understand the language of sequencing, I would make a list of sequence words. And I would make sure that the kids at the end of this lesson would have these words on a piece of paper in a clearly arranged format in order to take home with them and take to their other classes so that they can use it as an aid in order to understand cues for sequencing. And right here, it doesn't show up very well on here, but I have the words divided into beginning, middle, and end, and these are color-coded. So for the beginning, I have green words. For the middle, they're yellow, and the end words are red. And that also helps to visualize on the board. And I, if possible, would like to give the kids the same sheet in the same color scheme. For the beginning words, I have things like first, start, before, once upon a time, which is very common in stories. For the middle words, we have next, later, then, after, and during. And then for the end words, I have things like finally, lastly, at last, and finish. And I would also invite the kids to think of other words that fit into these, other sequencing words that we would put up on the board. Now, once that is done, we're going to play our game. And the game is called the Make a Face game. And what we do is each of the children is given one of these blank face cards. Now, they could be colored or they could be, I would leave them white like this. And the kids will be sitting at a table. Obviously, everything needs to be size appropriate. And I would let the kids each pick out one face that they're going to put down in front of them on the desk. And then we have these facial features: eyes, nose, and mouth. And there are several of them, and they would be mixed out in front of them. And I would put the facial features about arm's length away from where they're sitting, because otherwise they're just going to start grabbing them and putting them on the faces. Another option would be to have the facial feature cards actually on a separate table, like in front of the teacher, and as each child has their turn, they come up and take one, and then go and sit down at their desk and put the face down. Now, the way we play the game is that each child in turn is asked a question about sequencing. For example, tell me one thing you need to do before you take a shower. Or tell me 2 things in order that you need to do when you wake up in the morning. And it's important to point out to the children, especially those who might have social skill issues, that you need to wait until it's your turn, and when it's someone's turn to speak, no one else is allowed to answer the question. So, to begin with, the child has their face, and they have to answer a question. Tell me 2 things that you do after you ride your bicycle. And if they can answer correctly, they get to go pick out a facial feature and put it on the face. And the winner of the game is the person who completes their entire face with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Now, a couple of ways to make this activity more difficult would be to have the children name 3 or 4 sequenced items rather than just 1 or 2. Or to have them name as many as they can in 30 seconds. So if you say, what are the things that you need to do in order to wash the dishes? And let them answer as many things as they can. And then maybe even get 1 point for each. So you can make it, rather than a face, you can make it a bingo card and have them fill in as many different things as they can. And have a set number, for example, 10 squares be the winning game. Another option would be to, rather than building a face, have them build something more complex, like a teddy bear with arms and legs and head and facial features and clothing. So that's going to be a lot more steps than just having 3 to win. Now, at the end of the activity, obviously, I'm going to give each kid a copy of the sheet with the sequencing items. And that's it. That's the end of the activity.